lovely starshine lights my way to bed.
Yay! Now you should have a cuffed sleeve. So in this next video, what I'm going to do is show you how to set the sleeve in the armhole of the blouse, and then that will finish the sleeve. So do watch on, I'll show you exactly how to do that, and then I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is pin the sleeve in the armhole of the blouse so that I can get that sewn. So what I've got here is the blouse with the wrong side of the fabric facing up towards me, and this is the front of the blouse. So what I will have is 2 notches there, and because that's the front, and 1 notch on the back. What I'm then going to do is put the sleeve inside the top with the right side of the fabric facing up. So that's going to go inside into that armhole, and I'm going to pin it by first of all matching up the side seam. So there's the side seam of the sleeve and the side seam of the top. So match up those seam lines and put in a pin. Again, it's easier if you put the pins on the inside because that's where you'll be sewing. What I'm then going to do is match the centre notch. I put a pin in the centre notch because you can lose it when you start to add in the gathers. And I'm going to match that up with the top shoulder seam line. Then what I'm going to do is match the notches at the bottom. So that's the 2 notches that have matched together. And the same on the other side. What I then want to do is make the sleeve so that it's the same size as the armhole by either pulling the threads to make that gathering stitch tighter or by loosening them off. And I can see here, you can see it looks like my sleeve has gathered a little bit too much to fit into that armhole, so I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. Actually, no, it isn't. It needs gathering up a bit more. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to pull the top thread. There you go. And now it fits. So I'm going to put some pins in there. Put quite a few pins in to keep it in place. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. So let's have a look what needs to happen with that. Let's just pull that in. It actually needs to come out a bit. A little bit more. There we go, and pin that in place. Setting a sleeve can get quite fiddly and quite frustrating at first, but just don't get too hung up on it. If I don't get too hung up on making sure my gathers are really even all the way around a sleeve, because nobody's going to notice that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so you can see there now the sleeve fits perfectly all the way around that armhole. So what I'm then going to do is take it over to the sewing machine and just sew the seam allowance all the way around. So I head over to the machine. Okay, so I'm just going to sew the armhole and the sleeve together by sewing this seam allowance. It's a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and as before, the easiest method is to sew on the inside of the sleeve. It just makes it easier to guide through your sewing machine. So I'm going to start with a back stitch. And just sew that in place.
All my dreams are coming, all my dreams are humming, all my dreams are coming true.
And I'm just going to have a quick check over to make sure there are no puckers. Obviously, if you've got puckers in the sleeve, that's okay because you've got the gathers, but what you're looking to make sure is that you haven't got any of the actual blouse itself puckered into a seam line. Yes, so if you can see there, I have got one there where the actual blouse itself has puckered into that seam line. So all I'm going to do is unpick a couple of stitches around that area and re-sew it. I'll just check as I haven't got any others. That's it. So I'll sort that pucker out, and then all I will do then to finish the sleeve is press the seam allowance, and then I'm just going to run that seam allowance through my overlocker. So I'll get that done in just a second. Okay, so final bit on these sleeves then is to overlock that seam allowance, as I said before. If you've not got an overlocker, don't worry, you can just use a zigzag stitch on a standard machine. Do double check before you overlock that you haven't got any of those pesky puckers, because if you have, once you've overlocked, they're more difficult to get rid of than before you've overlocked. So just do a thorough check of the seams. Any that have puckered, just unpick them and just restitch that area. And don't worry too much if you have got puckers, it keeps those seam ripper companies in business. Okay, so let's get this sewn then. I'm trimming off very minimal here because it's only a really narrow seam anyway at 1 centimetre. I love my Baby Lock overlocker. Don't have to make any adjustments to it at all on the different fabric types. It just knows exactly what to do. Just look at that there. How it knows, I don't know, but it does. Okay, so that is the inside sleeve seam allowance. just show you. So there's the sleeve on the inside. Although it's not a French seam, it's very nicely finished with the overlocker. So I'll just repeat that on the other sleeve, and that is it until we get to doing the buttonhole and the button. The sleeves are done. You should be very pleased with yourself, as am I. Yay to finishing those sleeves. I think the sleeves are the most, not necessarily difficult, but the most time consuming bit of this blouse, because there's just so many steps to it. If it's your first time of sewing a sleeve with a cuff, then a big well done. If I'm being absolutely honest, I've not sewn that many cuffed sleeves myself. I could probably count on one hand the number of times that I've done it, so do keep practicing. It becomes easier every time. And I'm sure you'll agree it's worth it. The sleeve on this blouse is really lovely. I love how loose it is and how baggy it is, but then how it gathers around the cuff, so it just gives it that lovely shape. So yeah, definitely worth it. So all that's left on this blouse then is the collar. So the next thing that we're going to be doing is adding the collar stand and the collar, and of course the lovely bow that you can add or remove, and then it will just be to hem, and then that's it, we'll be done. Other than the buttonholes and buttons, actually I nearly forgotten about those. I've not even picked my buttons yet, so not quite sure what I'm going to go for, whether I'll go for a black button to contrast with the black, or whether I'll go for white or even a brown. Not too sure yet. I need to get myself down to the button shop and find those soon. Okay, so I'll see you over in the next video where we'll look at sewing this collar. Bye!